Today on the Avenue podcast, we have the pleasure of welcoming Will Schryver, who's a managing director at Anchor Peabody. Thanks for coming, Will.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about Anchor Peabody, what you guys do, and the whole premise of the company.
Yeah, sure. So Anchor Peabody is an investment bank, but not only just any investment bank. I would say we're a boutique investment bank focused solely on the building products, the construction space. And what differentiates us is within our firm, our senior bankers focus on a particular vertical and become true experts in that vertical. And how that differs from other investment banks or even business brokers is think of the traditional model as more generalist in nature. Mm-hmm. So you might have one individual at a middle market investment bank focus on all things building products.
Right.
And that individual is jumping around constantly between roofing, paving, windows and doors, and it's impossible to become a true expert in any one of those verticals. And similarly, a business broker, they're very generalist in nature,
Absolutely.
Not as sophisticated, right? So they might just post a business that is for sale, not really understanding the market or the buyers, and just hope that the phone rings, kind of like a real estate agent, right?
Right.
And so that's how we differentiate ourselves, is focusing on one vertical, and mine happens to be home services, and in particular HVAC, plumbing, electrical. So that's where I spend all my time and really ingrain myself in that space. And when you do that, you become a true industry insider. Mm-hmm. You know what all the consolidators are up to and where they're moving next, why they're moving there. And when you develop that wealth of knowledge, that's when you can leverage that for
Absolutely.
your clients, particularly on the sell side, but even on the buy side.
And I mean, it is a very complex industry, so being a specialist within a specific vertical within an already pretty wide industry is definitely a rarity, so I can understand why there would be a need for that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you actually got into that business?
Yeah, sure. So before I got into mergers and acquisitions, M&A, I started my career off in the military. I did that for a few years. Done everything between finance and strategy work, but eventually found my way into M&A. Started on the buy side and really fell in love with it. And eventually made my way into the building product space. And spent a number of years there at a prior firm, and just really enjoyed everything in and around the home. It's very tangible. I've renovated homes myself, so I've worked with contractors, and I can see what it means when you redo a kitchen or redo the floors or redo the roof. You really see almost like the house comes to life after that. And so that's when I really fell in love with all things building products.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so from an M&A standpoint, home service is a pretty interesting industry. It's not one that you typically hear in the M&A world. So can you tell us a little bit about what sets that industry apart from maybe other more general industries where M&A is definitely more of a commonality?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we've seen over the last couple of years is a lot of interest, institutional interest. And what I mean by that is private equity, family offices wanting to get into all things home services. And over the last couple of years, you've really seen a lot of institutional capital, private equity come in and start to consolidate the space. And I think what they find particularly interesting is technology over the last few years, like a Service Titan, for example, has allowed the business model to become scalable. Right. I mean, years ago, back when we had fax machines and a carbon copy, ticket, those days are gone now. Yeah. They have CRMs that can track customers and whenever they change homes. So technology has opened up
so many opportunities.
Yeah, right. It's opened up so many opportunities, and institutional capital has taken notice of that, and they see this space as highly fragmented, very mom and pop, an opportunity to consolidate and streamline a lot of back office functions and really gain scale.
So what are some of the trends that you've seen in the recent years? Maybe we can even say in the last couple of years, since COVID obviously has disrupted the industry significantly. Have you noticed any significant trends?
Yeah, it's an acceleration of that consolidation trend. I would say it started pre-COVID. Early innings were, 2016 to 19. And then once COVID took place, it really ramped up. And I I really think that's a function of a number of things. I touched on the technology aspect, but also a lot more folks were working from home, right? And they started looking around their home saying, if I'm working here, boy, that kitchen is now becoming an eyesore, or I really want to replace this. And so with that, there was an increase in demand on all things home services,
Absolutely.
right? So private equity has taken notice and, hey, we're going to capitalize off the back of this. So coming out of COVID, you really saw a ramp up in consolidation, particularly in HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. And now you're starting to see a bit of a slowdown or a normalization, I would say. If I had a chart, you'd see a huge spike up in late 2020 into 22, and now things are starting to get back to pre-COVID levels. So that's an interesting trend that I'm noticing, but also beyond HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, now I'm starting to see interest gravitate towards roofing, for example, or landscaping. And, well, I would say pest control, but pest control has been a hot space for years. But there continues to be interest in other verticals within home services.
So let's talk a little bit about the transactional process when you've got a home service business owner that's looking to potentially sell and get acquired in the next year or two. What are some of the things that they need to look out for? How can they prepare their company for an acquisition, and run us through that process a little bit?
Sure. So that's a quite a common question that I get when I'm speaking with business owners, and I don't know where they pick it up from. Maybe they had a quick conversation with a broker type, and their understanding is that, so what do? You collect some financials, you put a posting out there, and we see if there's interest, and that's sort of how it works. I said, it's a little more complicated than that. Not only complicated, but a little more structured is maybe how I should frame it. The way I run a process, you really can break it down into 3 different phases. So the first phase is the pre-marketing preparation phase. And that can be as long or as short as need be. No one knows you're going out to market, you're contemplating a sale, but that allows us to get our house in order. There are a number of diligence documents and questions that I know are going to come up, so I use that time to prepare for that and get organized, and also develop a marketing document. And with that marketing document, it can range from 24 pages. I've seen some that go up to 70 pages.
Wow.
But it tells the story of why this makes a compelling investment opportunity. Why should you as a buyer invest in, John Smith's HVAC company? Right? So what I do in that document, I list all the key attributes and the highlights, the growth opportunities, and then just walk through the different aspects of the organization. I do that, work on a financial model, and show what the projections will look like going forward. And because that's ultimately what the buyer's investing is, not what they've done historically, but what they're doing going forward.
Absolutely.
So once we have all that together, then we move to phase 2, which is the marketing phase. And that's where I use that marketing document. And that's when I email, call, reach out to a list of buyers. It's not just blasting it out to anybody. I have a very targeted list because I know who the buyers are.
Of course.
So I always
specialization.
Right, exactly. So I always explain it as, think of like a funnel. It's a targeted funnel. So when I go out and I reach out to my targeted list of buyers, over time I'm whittling it down and down selecting that buyer universe to see who's really interested. And so that goes on for a few weeks, and then I set an initial bid deadline, or an indication of interest, an IOI, to say, if you're interested in this opportunity, here's the deadline to submit your initial offer. And I sit down with the owner and explain to them, here are all the IOIs. Here's my feedback on each of them. And it's not always just about value. It's about certainty to close, what it's going to be like to partner with them, what their plans are. Do they want you on board? How are they going to treat your employees? So I go through everything. It's not just about value. Then we move forward. Usually bring them in for one-on-one meetings with the owner, give them, the buyers, a little more information, and a few weeks after that, I set a final bid deadline.
Okay.
I explain to the buyers, you've met with the owner, received a ton of information on all things business, finance, and accounting. You have enough to give us a view on your final offer. And that's called a letter of intent, or an LOI. And at that point, we really down select, look at a small handful of LOIs, and we figure out who we're going to partner with going forward. And at that point, usually it's under exclusivity, and you're working through the last phase, which is confirmatory diligence. And that can vary wildly, as short as 45 days, or it can stretch 2-3 months. It really depends on how quickly we can move, how quickly the buyer and their advisors can move. And when I say confirmatory diligence, that's really think all things legal, operations, insurance, IT, everything outside of finance and accounting.
Got it.
And ultimately, we're getting to a closing at that point. So that's how I kind of break it up into 3 different chunks. And if you think, well, Will, how long does that take? I would budget 6 months conservatively, but it can flex out to, call it, 8 months or so.
So let's say that this business owner, John Smith HVAC Company, he's already been chatting with business brokers, potentially PE funds approached him and has expressed interest. How can you come in and help that business owner get really the best value for him and their family when they are looking to exit?
No, it's an excellent question. In fact, it's a conversation I had just recently, a couple weeks ago. I met with a business owner, and just like most business owners, whether it's HVAC or other home services, they have buyers reaching out to them, if not daily, it's a couple times a week, whether it's email, cold calls, you name it. And this one business owner in particular, he said, "Well, I ignore most of them, but this one sent in an unsolicited offer, seemed interesting. He didn't know any better, big dollars." So he said, okay, I'll entertain this, and went down the road working with them directly, one-on-one, without an advisor. Spent tens of thousands of dollars, wasted 3 months of back and forth, ultimately to find out that what this buyer was doing, and this is common, not all of them do this, but this is quite common when it's outside of a competitive process, what they'll do, and they know there's no other competition, you're just talking to me one-on-one, they'll start off with a high dollar value, just kind of hook you in,
it down.
And then they'll find ways after they dig in and say, oh, well, I uncovered X or I uncovered Y. And slowly that high dollar value gets whittled down.
Right.
We call that retrading, right? And that's ultimately what happened with this business owner. And so he just walked away sort of, out of disgust. And we started talking through his options, and I explained to him what a structured process would look like and the benefits of doing that. And the benefits of where I sit and me knowing what all these buyers are up to and what they really want. And what I do is not only am I just describing the company in that marketing document I was talking about before, but I position the company in a way that hits on all the points that these buyers are looking for, right? So that it's hard to really quantify that, but if you position it in a way so that it hits all those key points that the buyer wants and are looking for, that's when they really lean in with an aggressive offer. And if they know, oh, my other competitor is also a part of this process, I don't disclose that, but they catch hints that I know somebody else wants in the same market, and so that's when you almost get a bidding war. Of course. And that's when it gets really interesting for the owner. That's who I'm working for, right?
Absolutely.
Not the buyer. And so we call that, the closing the gap in that multiple arbitrage. The buyer's trying to find a good deal, and I'm trying to close that gap and maximize the outcome for the owner.
Absolutely. So what are some of the other common challenges that might be faced by that business owner, aside from, again, being approached by a buyer that may want to have no competition in the transaction process?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a number of landmines throughout a process, and I'll go back to the 3 phases that I broke down before. It's best to uncover what those landmines might be in phase 1.
Absolutely.
Before we reach out to buyers and go out to market. And that can be a range of issues, whether it's something going on with the financials. You've got a one-off event where it was an unprofitable quarter over the summer for whatever reason that we'll just need to explain and understand that. But you have to craft a narrative around that and explain, well, here's what took place and here's why that should never happen again. Right. It could be key employees. Maybe somebody recently left and you need to backfill this position. A lot of times, conversations that I get from owners are, well, maybe I should just run it lean, a lean organization, because I know I'm going to sell anyways.
Right.
I would argue that, or encourage owners to just continue running the business as if you were never going to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
You know you need to replace a GM, go ahead and hire and backfill that role.
Right.
Or a dispatcher or another tech or whatever it may be. And same goes with the fleet of trucks. Don't let an aging fleet sit out there and continue to age because, well, hey, I'm going to sell it anyways. Why am I going to go buy another truck or two? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, if you don't take care of that now, you're going to get dinged later on in the process. When we're deep into the process, buyers are going to uncover these issues. Mm-hmm. And that's when they're going to find reasons to ding you on value and bring the value down. And
it's a hypothetical at best. You never know that the transaction is actually going to close.
That's fair. That is
risk
true.
That can happen, and if you start changing the course of action for how you run your business on a potential transaction, you might be making the wrong decisions.
That's absolutely right. There's never 100% certainty that a deal will close. There are so many unknowns out there. There could be a geopolitical events. I mean, who knows? Something could go on with the economy. You never know. So at a minimum, you're absolutely right. You should be running the business as if you were never going to sell anyways. I think of it as, hey, we're going to close, but I don't want to give the buyer any leverage as to why they should, discount us for any reason whatsoever, whether it's key employees, aging infrastructure, fleet.
Right.
So I want to remove any leverage that they might have, and that's just one of them.
Right. So let's say you're John Smith's HVAC company, since that's the example we're using, and you're looking to sell. What are some of the first steps that you should take as a home service business owner if you are looking to get acquired?
Yep. So I would suggest that we have a conversation as an M&A advisor, as an investment banker. I can explain to you whether you're considering a sale in 6 months or in 6 years. And these are the type of conversations I have all the time, even if it's years down the road, just to give you an understanding of what is the process like, what are valuation expectations, who are the likely buyers, what is the plan for me after we close. I can walk through all of those different scenarios and any questions up front, again, whether it's months out or this is years away. I would encourage getting a good CPA firm, review the books, find if there are ways to get margins up to where they need to be. If you're running in the 10% EBITDA margin, that may not be best in class, but if you get in the high teens to 20% EBITDA margin, you're probably hitting your stride and you're tip-top shape there. Going back to filling key roles, if there's an employee that, or if it's a GM, for example, that needs to season or spend some time in their seat for 6 months, I would go ahead and start that process now. Okay. Last thing you want to do is go out there in market, meeting with buyers, and hey, I just hired Steve, the GM. He's been here 3 weeks. He doesn't even know where the bathroom's located, right? So key employees need time to season in their role.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the future outlook and what that looks like in the home service M&A world. What's your personal feel on the outlook of the next 1 to 10 years in the industry?
Yeah, boy, if I had a crystal ball. I honestly see a further consolidation. Even with the consolidation that has gone on in the space, it's still so highly fragmented. Just picking on HVAC and plumbing and electrical, for example, one of the largest consolidators in the space, the 800-pound gorilla in the space, barely accounts for 1% market share.
Wow.
Right?
That's incredible.
And that was born through a series of over 150 different acquisitions over the last couple of years. So it just gives you a sense for how fragmented the space remains today. And that's the same with whether you're talking roofing or pest control or certainly landscaping, right? So what I see is that the larger consolidators, the big, are going to get bigger, and they're going to continue to roll up the space as we refer to it. And eventually, I could see a number of these larger platforms IPOing or going public. and then they'll trade just like Apple does or Microsoft.
So are you seeing any kind of emerging markets, or have you seen in the last few years any sort of emerging markets within the home service space?
I'd say some of the themes that I'm seeing are typically you'll have an independent family-owned business was a single trade, HVAC, for example. Now what I'm seeing, even if it's still privately held or it's part of one of these larger consolidators, is adding multiple trades under one roof. You're seeing some real synergies between that, whether it's HVAC, pairing that up with plumbing, and electrical as a good example. I was just chatting with a gentleman the other day, and he's a family-run organization, and he recently acquired some plumbing assets to pair up with his legacy HVAC business. And I was curious, I said, why did you go down that road? And he said, I'm naturally being asked by the consumer, the homeowner, hey, you did a great job on my AC unit. Do you happen to also do plumbing since you're already out here? So that's what I mean by those natural synergies. And so that's where I see an emerging theme is adding multiple trades under one roof. And I would encourage business owners to explore that. Even if it's one or two techs out in the field, just having that capability and that offering, you're really serving as almost, not quite, but almost as a one-stop shop for all things, plumbing needs or electrical or servicing your AC unit.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to be about the experience and the service that the consumer receives. If they're satisfied with the experience and the service they received on the HVAC front, there's no reason that they're not going to be asking, do you do plumbing? Do you do electrician services? So I think it only makes sense that if they have a good experience, they're going to want to have that similar experience across all of their different home service needs.
Right, and likely you're already out there. Certainly if you have a maintenance agreement in place, you're out there a couple times a year running through the neighborhood anyways. So the fact that you can also offer a different capability like plumbing or electrical, for example, you'll eliminate a lot of inconsistencies or dyssynergies by having multiple trucks. And think about it from the homeowner's perspective. They like the idea of talking to one contractor, for example, for several needs. Right? I don't want to talk to John, Steve, Bill, and for all my various needs. I'd rather, we refer to it as having one throat to choke. If something goes wrong, I only have to talk to one guy for my plumbing or an AC issue or whatever it may be.
So for our listeners that are interested in staying up to date on what's currently happening in the home service M&A space, is there any resources that they can stay up to date with, or just newsletters, websites that they can subscribe to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I'm always on LinkedIn. I use social media to post my latest thoughts. I'm always out there on the road picking up tidbits of information. So I'll release pretty frequently, every other week or so, different information on LinkedIn. I'll do posts there. Also, I have a database of folks that I will email a newsletter to with my recapping my thoughts on the year and kind of what I'm seeing on the horizon. So I would encourage you, reach out to me, and I'm happy to plug you in and not only send you the newsletters, which I send out every few months or so, or just updates on the market, but even a one-off. If you have a question and just want to chat through anything, I always get my cell phone out, text me any questions you might have, email me. I would say that's the best way to reach me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Will, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.